SPARQL, by its very nature, is designed around doing joins. I mean, pretty much everything you do in SPARQL is a join between some data. And so SPARQL processes, and particularly uRiKA, are very geared towards doing complex joins. They're very good at doing, multi-way joins very, very fast, and allow you to ask these sort of complex questions, get these complex patterns out of your data that you just can't get out of, SQL database easily. And the other advantage in terms of joins is, with SQL, you very much need to know exactly the structure of your data in order to make a useful join. So you need to know, that your the tables you're trying to join together have some relation that you can actually make a join on. There's some common data between those two tables that you can actually join on. So say you've got people, the people in your company and their roles in the company. And you're assuming there is some field that tells you, this person has this role in the company. You can make that join. So by its nature, the RDF data model and SPARQL queries don't require you to have that a priori knowledge of the data schema. So you can say, find me things that are people, find me things that are job roles, and and just sort of arbitrarily make that connection between people and their job role without necessarily needing to know how it's expressed in the database. Those sort of simple queries work well in SQL, but in SPARQL you can do them you can make them much more complex. You can start pulling in alternative sources of data because the data is naturally joinable by the way it's encoded. It's not, you've not got to worry so much about, do the way the values are encoded in this table naturally line up with the way the values are encoded in another table, because typically the way you express your RDF data would naturally do a lot of that for you. With SQL, you can't even ask a query unless you know what the database looks like. You need to, at the bare minimum, you would need to know what the name of a table is. And if you want to actually start asking anything useful, you've got to know, what are the names of the columns I'm interested in, and once you start doing even more, once you start going beyond that, well, I want to find, these columns, but only where they have these values, then you need to know, what are the types of the data that are in those columns in order to, express your constraint appropriately. So one of the advantages SPARQL has is that you can start with a database you know absolutely nothing about and just start asking questions, just simply, find me all the types that are expressed in this data, what properties are, and then what properties are used in conjunction with those types, which essentially, finding what are the columns of the data essentially. And you can start with some, very simple queries and sort of quite rapidly start drilling down into the data, start finding out useful things, start actually discovering what the structure of the data, how things relate to each other, and fairly quickly get to the point where you can actually ask useful queries. Whereas if you were just stuck in front of an unknown SQL database, even being able to, you couldn't do that at all unless you had sort of the privileges to, particularly, there's typically sort of security issues as well in SQL data, the way the data is kind of partitioned, you may not even be able to ask those questions of what is the schema in an SQL database, whereas you can quite naturally ask those in the SPARQL because of the structure of the data. My name is Rob Vesse, and this has been a uRiKA moment.